aren't you ready yet?
Well, darling, I had a hectic afternoon. I had a fitting at 6 o'clock and the wretched little man wasn't ready for me. Oh, come in, Felix.
Melissa, me old darling, you look wonderful.
Well, I feel like hell. Oh, that's new.
Do you like it?
Yes, I do, rather. I'm not sure about the collar, though. I don't think I shall bother with the coat tonight.
Well, I didn't know whether to wear it or not, but it's such lousy weather. Well, not another hat.
Oh, darling, it's nothing.
Oh, my God, the same old tune. Don't you ever get tired of it? Guy, we're here. Get a move on.
Guy isn't here. He hasn't come in yet.
We're supposed to be at Don's 8 o'clock.
Yes, I know, Paula, but there is nothing I can do about it.
Well, where is the old dear?
Well, you tell me, Felix. He had an appointment this afternoon in Fleet Street. That's all I know. Zip me up, Paula.
What's going to happen to Guy, Melissa?
Well, what do you mean, what's going to happen to him?
Well, is he going to get another job?
Well, of course he's going to get another job. Don't ask stupid questions, Paula.
It's nearly a year since that paper of his folded.
Yes, you can't expect Guy just to accept the first job that comes along.
Oh, the old dear has been offered another job, then?
Well, yes, of course, Felix. He's been offered several jobs.
In London?
Yes. Well, only last week they asked him to write a column for the Sunday Tribune, but he turned it down.
Sunday Tribune? I say, that's a jolly good rag. By George, you'd see life in the raw working for that outfit.
But why on earth did he turn it down, Melissa?
I don't know, Paula.
Wasn't the money any good?
Now, don't be silly, old girl. They're lousy with money. I bet they pay better than anyone else in Fleet Street.
Well, I don't know why he turned it down. He didn't tell me.
You know, I always thought the old dear would have been better off in a magazine than a newspaper. I mean, he's not really a newspaper man, is he?
But of course he's a newspaper man. He's been 10 years in Fleet Street. If that doesn't make you a newspaper
Yes,
man...
I know that, dearie. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't what I meant.
Well, what did you mean, Felix?
Well, I meant... Well, Guy's really a novelist, isn't he? He's not a news hound. He doesn't...
You mean he doesn't go around with his hat on the back of his head and a notebook in his pocket?
Yes, that's it, old dear. That's really what I meant.
Felix, you are years behind the times, really you are. I shan't be long. If Guy doesn't turn up, we'll simply have to go without him. It won't be the first time.
Oh, I say, she's pretty touchy, isn't she?
Oh, she's been like that for days. Of course, you know what's eating her, don't you?
No.
Guy doesn't want another job. Well, not really. He just wants to go on writing these books of his. The trouble is, he doesn't make any money out of them. Well, not what you'd call money, anyway.
Oh, I'm not surprised. Have you ever read one?
No.
Well, you think the poor dear was going round the bend?
Of course, this is a pretty expensive flat. If Guy doesn't get a regular job, I don't see how they can afford to stay here.
Well, knowing old Guy, I expect he's got a quid or two tucked away somewhere. Besides, he writes the odd article every now and again. Even had a story published in the States a couple of months ago.
Did he? I didn't know that.
By the way, have they still got that cottage?
At Lenton? Oh, yes, they've still got it. They talked of selling it, but nothing happened. I believe Guy thought about moving down there at one time.
I mean, to live there permanently?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good Lord. I couldn't live in a place like that. Too damn primitive for me.
Oh, I thought it was rather an attractive little place. Lonely, of course.
Lonely? Well, you can say that again.
Melissa!
Hello, Guy.
Oh, hello, Paula.
Guy, where on earth have you been? We thought you got lost.
Where's Melissa?
She's in the bedroom. She's nearly ready.
Now, put a move on, old scout. This thing of dawn starts at 8 o'clock.
Oh, I'm sorry, Felix. I'm not going. I've been out all afternoon. I've got an awful lot of work to do.
What do you mean, you're not going?
It's a perfectly simple statement, Melissa. I'm not going.
It's Don's birthday. You accepted this invitation weeks ago.
Yes, I know I
Well,
did,
you
but
shouldn't have accepted if you'd no intention of going.
But I did intend to go.
This is the second party of Don's you've cried off.
Nothing of the sort.
Yes, it is. He threw a party last year when he won the Sterling...
Oh, for God's sake, Melissa, last year!
Well, old girl, I think it's time we were making a move.
Now, come on, you two. Break it up.
I'm sorry, Melissa, but I've had a perfectly rotten day. And I simply couldn't face up to a party tonight.
What happened this afternoon?
Oh, the usual nonsense.
Well, what happened? Did they offer you a job?
Yes. But it was no good. Not for me, at any rate.
No. It never is it, Guy? Some gloves. I hope they fit. I didn't know what on earth to buy.
Well, we had a brainwave. You'll never guess what we sent. Oh, Felix, leave that bow alone. It looks awful.
Blaster thing's always skewy.
Felix, let me fix it for you. There, that's better.
Oh, that's it, old girl. Oh, I say. Bang on. Well, Are we ready, everybody?
My God, my husband's bright, isn't he? We've been ready since 7 o'clock.
Melissa. I'm sorry.
Have you had anything to eat?
Yes, thank you. I dropped into a pub and I had a few sandwiches.
There is some cold ham in the fridge.
Oh, don't worry about me, Melissa. I'll be all right.
I wasn't worrying. I was just making sure you wouldn't go hungry.
Bye, Ducky, be good.
Have a good
Take
time,
care of
boy.
yourself, Oscar.
Goodbye, Felix. Yes?
Is that you, Guy?
Oh, hello, Melissa.
How's it going, darling?
What?
Well, the book.
Oh, it's not.
Guy, I'm at Don's, and I've just met a frightfully interesting man called Walter Starr. You've probably heard of him. He owns all
Walter
those...
Starr? Yes, of course I've heard of him, for God's sake. He owns half Piccadilly. And the half he doesn't own, he's pulling down.
Well, darling, listen. I've been talking to him about you, and he's terribly interested and wants to meet you.
What, tonight?
Yes, he's invited half a dozen of us over to his place. We're leaving now. I said you'd join us there later.
Now, why on earth should a man like Walter Starr want to meet me?
Well, he's talking about buying a magazine, and he wants to know what... Oh, darling, don't argue. Just take the address down.
All right, go ahead.
Roxford House, Clinton Mews, West 40.
R-O-X?
Yes, that's right. Roxford House, Clinton Mews. Oh, and Guy, I almost forgot. I left my handbag behind.
Yes, I know. It's on the hat box in the hall.
Well, bring it with you, darling. Don't forget.
Good evening. I wonder if you can help me. I'm looking for Clinton Mews.
Clinton Mews?
Yes. Roxford House, Clinton Mews.
That's a new one on me.
Oh, Mr. Starr lives there, Mr. Walter Starr.
What is it, Sergeant?
This gentleman's inquiring for a place called Clinton Mews, sir. I've never heard of it.
Clinton Mews?
Yes, Roxford House, Clinton Mews. Mr. Walter Starr lives there.
Have you seen this coat before, sir?
Yes, I've seen one very like it.
Where?
Belonging to a friend of mine, Paula, Mrs. Hepburn.
When did you last see Mrs. Hepburn?
A little earlier this evening, she and her husband... What's happened?
Mrs. Hepburn's been murdered, strangled. We had the call about 20 minutes ago. Wait a minute. I'd like you to come along with me, if you will, sir.
Oh. Oh, my God.
You know this woman, sir?
Yes. It's not Mrs. Hepburn. It's my wife.
Yes. Now, I'd like to make quite sure I've got this right, Mr. Hepburn. You say that you and Mrs. Hepburn picked up Mrs. Foster at about 7:30 this evening. On the way here, Mrs. Foster complained of feeling cold, And your wife very kindly lent her the coat she was wearing. This coat.
Yes. Yes, that's right.
And later, Mrs. Foster discovered she'd left her handbag behind and insisted on returning to her flat for it.
Yes.
That would be about 8:15.
Yes, I should imagine so.
Didn't you offer to run Mrs. Foster home, sir?
Well, of course we did, but she said she'd already made us late for the party and she wouldn't hear of it, so we dropped her at a taxi rank near Baker Street.
Did she take a taxi, sir?
Yes, I think so.
You didn't actually see her get into one?
No, I don't think we did.
Mrs. Hepburn, weren't you surprised when Mrs. Foster didn't return, when she didn't show up at the party?
Well, we were very surprised. I telephoned the flat to see what had happened, but there was no reply.
There was no reply?
No.
What time would that be, sir?
It's really rather difficult to say. Sometime during the evening.
Well, I should say it was about 9:30, Inspector.
What did you think had happened to Mrs. Foster? Did you think there'd been an accident of some kind?
Oh, no, we didn't think that.
Well, what did you think?
Well, to be perfectly frank, Inspector, we thought that Melissa had made it up with Guy, that's her husband, and that they decided to spend the evening together somewhere.
Made it up? Had Mr. and Mrs. Foster had a quarrel then?
Oh, no, not a quarrel
Well,
exactly.
I mean, they had just had a tiff, a friendly tiff, Inspector. I mean, you know the kind of thing, nothing serious.
And what was this friendly tiff about exactly?
Well, Melissa, Mrs. Foster, wanted Guy to come to the party. Obviously, he didn't feel up to it. He wanted to work.
It was nothing, really, Inspector.
About this list you've given us, Mr. Page, the people who were at the party, haven't you forgotten someone?
No, I don't think so.
What about Mr. Starr? Walter Starr, wasn't he here this evening?
You mean the millionaire? The property chap?
Yes.
Oh, he wasn't here, was he, Don?
No, of course not. Now, I may have a fairly large circle of friends, Inspector. Unfortunately, it doesn't include Mr. Starr.
You're quite sure about the time, sir?
Yes, I'm quite sure. As soon as I put the telephone down, I looked at my watch. It was 11:15.
And Mrs. Foster said?
Inspector, I've already told you what my wife said. I've told you 3 or 4 times.
Tell me again, please, sir.
She said that she was at Don Page's. She said that she had met a man called Walter Starr who wanted to meet me. She said that a party of them were going over to his place. She gave me the address and she told me to meet her there.
Go on, sir.
She also said that she'd left her handbag behind. It was on the hat box in the hall, and she asked me if I would take it along with me.
And when you went out into the hall, you found the bag had disappeared?
Yes, and also the hat box. They were both on the table, and I just can't understand what could have happened to them.
Well, surely there's only one explanation, sir.
You mean you don't believe me? You think that when my wife left the Hepburn, she came back here to the flat?
That's what she said she was going to do, sir.
Well, she didn't.
Mr. Foster, I realize this must have been a terrible shock to you, but I'm afraid there are one or two things which just don't add up. For instance, I've questioned Mr. Page as well as Mr. and Mrs. Hepburn. He doesn't know Walter Starr.
But Melissa told me that he was at the party. She told me that
Mr.
she'd
Starr
been talking
is
to him
in
about
Nassau,
me.
sir. He flew there on Tuesday, and just for the record, Mr. Foster, he lives in Brighton. He hasn't got a house in London.
Well, I just don't understand this. I mean, I can't think why Melissa should want to lie to me like that. And if she wasn't at the party when she telephoned, then where the hell was she?
Mr. Foster, according to what you've told me, you spent the entire evening here working at your desk?
Yes.
You had no visitors, and you never left the flat, at least not until you had the phone call from Mrs. Foster?
That is true.
Yet Mr. Hepburn tried to ring this number at about 9:30, and there was no reply.
Oh, well, Felix, he could have dialed the wrong number. But I was certainly here. And the telephone must have been all right because Melissa got through.
Yes. You're quite sure you never left the flat, and you're quite sure that Mrs. Foster didn't return for her handbag?
Good God, yes, I've already told you that. Yes, I'm quite sure.
Is that your wife's handbag?
Yes.
It was near a bush about 10 yards from where we found Mrs. Foster. Do you recognize these things? Tell me about your wife, Mr. Foster.
What did you say?
I said, tell me about your wife, sir.
What is it you want to know about her?
Was she in good health? Had she consulted a doctor fairly recently?
Melissa? Yes, I think she was quite well. She never complained of feeling ill, not to me at any rate.
The reason I ask is because of this. It's a prescription. It's torn. The doctor's address is missing, I'm afraid. It looks as though it was made out on October the 8th.
October the 8th?
Yeah.
Well, it's just over a week ago.
Yes, just over a week. Signed by someone called Swanley.
Swanley?
Yes, Norman Swanley, M.D. Did your wife ever consult a Dr. Swanley, Mr. Foster?
No, not that I'm aware of. I've never heard of him.
Yes. This is my signature, but part of the prescription seems to be missing.
Yes, sir.
Well, how can I help you, Inspector?
I found this prescription in a woman's handbag. The woman, Mrs. Foster, was murdered last night, and I'm investigating...
Mrs. Foster?
That's right, sir. Mrs. Guy Foster. Dark, rather good-looking woman.
But I know her. She came to see me about a month ago. You say she was murdered?
Yes, sir, last night. She was strangled.
Good God. Why, that's terrible. An extremely nice woman, too. I remember her very well.
What was the matter with Mrs. Foster, sir?
The matter? Why, nothing, so far as I know.
But I thought you said she came to see you, Doctor.
Oh, I see what you mean. No, Mrs. Foster wasn't a patient of mine. As a matter of fact, she came to see me about her husband. He was the patient, not Mrs. Foster.
Mr. Foster? Guy Foster is a patient of yours?
Yes, certainly.
Would you mind telling me all you know about Mr. and Mrs. Foster, sir?
Yes, of course. But I'm afraid I don't know a very great deal about either of them, Inspector. Don Page, the racing driver, is a patient of mine, and one day Mrs. Foster, who was a friend of his, told him that she was very worried about her husband. He advised her to come and see me. Incidentally, Inspector, I'm a neurologist specializing...
Yes, I know, Doctor. I looked you up. Please go on, sir.
Well, Mrs. Foster made an appointment and came to see me. She told me that her husband had difficulty in sleeping, was of a very jealous disposition, and frequently quarrelled with her for no apparent reason. She also said that he resolutely refused to see a doctor. She was a charming woman, and I felt sorry for her, very sorry, but obviously there was just nothing I could do. About 10 days later, and rather to my surprise, her husband telephoned my secretary and made an appointment to see me.
And did you see him?
Yes, certainly. I examined him, gave him a prescription, this one I rather imagine, and arranged to see him again in about a fortnight's time. I think, if I remember rightly, the appointment is for one day next week.
I thought you might want these.
Thank you, Joyce. So, yes, just as I thought. This is the prescription. I gave it to Mr. Foster the day I examined him, Tuesday, October the 8th. I'm due to see him... Yes, his appointment was at 3:30. Now, I'm due to see him again next week on the 23rd.
I'd like to make quite sure we're both talking about the same man, Doctor. Is that your Mr. Foster?
Yes, of course. That's Foster.
Good afternoon, Mr. Foster.
Oh, good afternoon, Inspector.
May I come in?
Yes, of course. I telephoned you before lunch, but you were out.
Yes, so I understand. What is it you wanted, sir?
Well, I wanted to find out if there's any news, any development.
Yes, there's been quite an interesting development, Mr. Foster. May I sit down?
Please do.
I've had another talk with Mr. and Mrs. Hepburn. I understand your wife had a pair of gloves with her when she left for the party.
Yes, that's right. They were a birthday present for Mr. Page.
Have you any idea what happened to them?
No, I'm afraid I haven't.
See, we found your wife's handbag and the coat she was wearing, Mrs. Hepburn's coat, but we didn't find the pair of gloves.
Why are you interested in the gloves?
Well, for two reasons, Mr. Foster. One, because they're missing. Two, because I have a theory about them. I think the murderer was wearing them when he strangled your wife. However, I didn't come here to talk to you about the gloves.
No? Then what did you come here to talk about?
The prescription.
The prescription?
Yes, the one I found in the handbag, the one that was given to you by Dr. Swanley.
Given to me?
Yes.
But I don't know Dr. Swanley.
Mr. Foster, I really don't see why you should lie about this. After all, there's no reason why you shouldn't have consulted a doctor if you weren't feeling well.
I'm not lying.
Wasn't your wife worried about you? Didn't she talk to Mr. Page about you, and as a result of that conversation go and see Dr. Swanley?
No, not to my knowledge.
Didn't you personally consult Dr. Swanley on the afternoon of Tuesday, October the 8th?
No, of course I didn't. I've told you, I've never met the man.
Well, he's met you, Mr. Foster.
Don! Don, wait a minute.
Hello, Guy. Guy, I nearly came round to see you this morning, then I thought, well, perhaps I wouldn't. How are you, all right?
Yes, I'm all right, but I've got to talk to you, Don. It's very important.
Well, look, I'm a bit late. I'm supposed to be at Coventry at 7 o'clock. The Midland people are giving a dinner, Yeah, all right, come on, jump in, Guy. Well, then, Guy, what's it all about?
Don, did Melissa ever talk to you? About me, I mean.
Yes, she often talks about you, Guy.
Did she ever tell you that I was ill? Well, did she?
Yes.
When?
About 5 weeks ago, she came round to my place one afternoon.
Well, go on, Don.
Well, she said that you couldn't sleep and you were constantly irritable, and she was very worried about it. I told her you ought to see a man called Swanley, a nerve specialist in Devonshire Place. Did you ever go and see him, by the way?
No, I didn't. That's what's peculiar about it, because apparently
Well, you should have done, old boy. I mean, he's absolutely first class. You remember that case of mine about a year ago when I knocked a fella down in Knightsbridge and this damn fool of a taxi driver swore I was tied?
Yes.
Well, I got off and everything, but it shook my nerve at the time, I don't mind telling you. Well, if it hadn't been for this Swanley character, I'd have had it. Professionally, at any rate.
Don, what did Melissa really tell you about me?
Well, she said that you were on edge and you couldn't sleep, and she was...
She was what?
She said she was frightened of you.
Frightened of me? Melissa?
Yeah.
What else did she say?
Well, it was nothing, Guy. She just said that,
Look, Don, please, I've got to know.
She said you'd changed. She said at times you were almost like a different person.
But that's not true, Don. It just isn't true. Look, you haven't told anybody else about this. I mean, you haven't told the inspector what Melissa said.
Good Lord, no, Guy. What do you take me for? Look, let's talk about this some other time, shall we? I'll be back later on tonight. I'll tell you what, give me a ring first thing tomorrow morning, eh?
All right. By the way, about this Swanley character, did you say he lived in Devonshire Place?
Yeah, I can't remember the number.
I want to see Dr. Swanley, please.
Sorry, but Dr. Swanley's... Oh, it's Mr. Foster, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
But surely your next appointment is in a week's time, Mr. Foster.
But I haven't got an appointment.
Oh? But didn't we make one for you last time before you left, sir?
Look here, I've got to see Dr. Swanley now. It's very urgent.
I'm sorry, but Dr. Swanley isn't here at the moment. He's at the hospital. In fact, he won't be here until tomorrow afternoon.
Tell Dr. Swanley that I've got to see him. It's very important. I shall be here tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock.
Yes, very well, Mr. Foster.